Hey, this is Joe Hernandez, the voice of Daruk and Yunobo in Zelda Breath of the Wild, asking you to subscribe to Game Over Jesse and listen to our interviews and episodes together on this Zelda podcast, the 𝐈𝐧𝐬𝐭𝐭𝐞𝐫. And for all the latest up-to-date news on your favorite Goron, be sure to follow me at Joe Hernandez VO. I recorded my lines for this game here at home. Like, to me, that's so surreal. Like,
that has to make it a bit more special.
It does make it very special. Like, it really, really does. And from what I've seen in the clips and the gameplay and all that, it sounds pretty seamless. So that's a credit to the engineering team and the sound team, and like I said, the directors and the producers and everybody that put in all of those hours that went in to make this game what it was. Yeah,
I imagine there was a lot of just getting everything set up and having to tweak a bunch of stuff to get it as perfect to the people on the other end as possible.
Yeah, one of the challenges, just as a voice actor in general, is you can't just be a voice actor. Being the actor in this equation is just one part of it. But if you want to complete your skill set, you kind of need to be your own engineer. You kind of need to be your own writer and your director sometimes. Sometimes you need to be your own social media guy. Sometimes you need to be your own, you wear several different hats in this industry. And right now during COVID, you really, really need to wear several different hats as far as the technical side of all that stuff. So, we're kind of sometimes left to our own devices. But thank goodness that we, when you're working on projects such as this, you have teams of sound engineers and, like I said, directors and producers that are there to make sure that you succeed, because when you succeed, the project succeeds.
Yeah, there was a bit of confusion early on, like when the first couple of trailers released, to where Daniel and I think we spoke about it on a previous podcast episode, where some people in the comments were like, "Oh, Daruk sounds a bit different," and in our heads we were like, "No, it sounds the same. Maybe it's just been a while since you played Breath of the Wild." But but
also like someone just talking to their friend, like Daruk, on the Divine Beast, and I remember talking to Link, the way that you would just speak naturally to your friend versus the way you'd probably be shouting while punching someone in the face is you're going to sound a little more exasperated in one versus the other. From Breath to where we're at right now with Hyrule, I don't think they pitched him down as much as before. So you're hearing more of my natural voice, I would say, whereas before they did do a little bit of EQ play on it. But I feel like with the dialogue and with a lot of the cinematics, I feel like, one, we're fleshing out the characters more and more, but it also gives the opportunity to really play with the performance if you're not messing with some of the EQ stuff. If you're not really getting into the levels and all that stuff. So I feel like I was able to kind of have a little bit more free reign with my performance this go around. Yeah. I've noticed that I haven't finished the game. I'm not as far through as I'd like to be, as I mentioned before we started recording this. But so far, what I've gotten through, this game is a lot more voiceover and cutscene heavy than say Breath of the Wild was. Did you find that the recording process was lengthier because of that too, or did you find it was not that much different between the two games? Or
I would say that if I'm not mistaken, I want to say I had more sessions for this than I did with for Breath. And one of the things that I really, really enjoyed during both processes is that they gave us more than ample time to work on this. From a recording session perspective. So often, and I'll work on a number of other projects, there's a lot of time constraints. And just, budgets being what they are, and then time is money and all that other stuff. Sometimes, you're then deadlines also being what they are. You're feeling the crunch, you're feeling the pinch, and, you gotta really, really just, hammer through stuff, and you're bound by the time and the deadlines and all that stuff. Working on Breath and working on this, I didn't really feel that pressure. We had time to explore and play and make mistakes and correct them. And, I didn't feel any pressure whatsoever working on either of those projects where, the producers or the directors are like, hey, come on, we got to go. Come on. Hey, what's going on? There are projects that I have worked on where, hey, we said we'd be here working for 2 hours. We got to do that. And we can't, go a minute over or anything like that. So, a credit to Nintendo for doing that and giving us the time and the creative liberty to just flesh these characters out.
Yeah, that's really cool. It seems actually a lot more, as an observation, like the tone of the game so far is a little bit more playful as well, which I enjoy. I think it fits the gameplay better. So, yeah. Jesse, go ahead.
So earlier you mentioned like no one really expected this game to be coming out, and I didn't either, and I don't think anyone really did, especially with it being like another Hyrule Warriors crossover. I'm sure a lot of people did expect a Hyrule Warriors 2, but it just being a sequel or more of the same as the original, not something based off of like the newest game, and especially while everyone's waiting on the sequel to it to eventually come out. So far we've only gotten that one trailer, which everyone has been excited about. But with the Hyrule Warriors and it being the big multiplayer version of like a Breath of the Wild prequel, there was an interview, or I don't know if it was an interview or an announcement, where they said that it was Nintendo that approached them to make the game. It wasn't them being like, hey, when are we going to work on like Hyrule Warriors 2 or another spin-off or whatever. It was Nintendo wanting to make the game because they thought it would be the best way to represent what happened in the past 100 years ago.
Yeah.
And there's the infamous interview that Daniel and I talk about a lot when it comes to Breath of the Wild and what could possibly be coming in the future, which we always just assumed it would be their idea for Breath of the Wild 2. But it was Aonuma saying that whenever Breath of the Wild, before it was titled Breath of the Wild and just known as Zelda Wii U, he made a bunch of, like anytime he was interviewed or something or had an announcement, he said that he didn't want you to think of Zelda Wii U as a single-player Zelda game. And nobody really knew what that meant at the time. They were messing with the Miiverse on Wii U, which you could communicate with other people, and in some like tiny way that isn't a single player experience. Like in Wind Waker, you could cast out bottles of notes to other players online.
Yes.
And then
the mailboxes and everything.
Yeah, and with so when Breath of the Wild came, a lot of people thought, oh well, he might have been meaning that, or it could be something to where, like, I always use the example of Wolf Link in Breath of the Wild. Instead of an AI controlling it, maybe they originally had ideas for like a second player could pick up a controller and then play as Wolf Link, because it is optional and it doesn't take anything away from the story. It's already there. And then after Breath of the Wild released, he mentioned once again, but changed it up a bit this time. Instead of saying he didn't want you to think of it as a single player experience, he said that he wanted to take the multiplayer of Triforce Heroes and apply it to the Breath of the Wild engine. And that could mean a bunch of different things because they're two completely different games. But a lot of people just assumed, oh, well, it's just like a multiplayer game in Breath of the Wild. Maybe Breath of the Wild 2 will let you play as Zelda or a champion, which is what a lot of people wanted in DLC for Breath of the Wild. And then everyone's guess was wrong. Even though we had these interviews to kind of go off of and information from the person who's overall in charge of the series, and even with all that information, no one had an idea that, oh, it's Hyrule Warriors. So I do think, like, there was a lot of people after the game released that was like, oh, well, Hyrule Warrior, like, it's not Breath of the Wild. And it's like, no, that's why it's not called The Legend of Zelda. That's why it's Hyrule Warriors. Just look at the first game and then imagine that, but with Breath of the Wild characters. And that's what it is. So I have personally really enjoyed it. But what was it like for you to not just be a character in the background that's leading Link on the journey, but now you're a playable character and actually a main part of the story?
It really was something else. I mean, I feel like the stakes are definitely higher this go around, and it's so massive and so epic. And I kind of like, there would be times where we would be working on it, and obviously, I kind of have to be professional. I kind of, okay, I'm Joe, the voice actor, and I'm here, and I'm professional, and we're gonna get through this session, and we're gonna do it, and we're not gonna have any hiccups or any bumps in the road or anything like that. And then all of a sudden they'll show me a cutscene, and I'm like geeking out, because it's like, oh my gosh, they're doing this, or this is happening, or these characters are getting together, and like there's all this stuff. And so like, I had to deal with the duality of it, of being a fan, but also trying to be a professional at the same time.
I don't think I could do it.
And I'm trying not to spoil anything for anybody that hasn't made it that far in the game, just because there's some really, really cool stuff, and and I feel like both Joe the voice actor, Joe the professional, and Joe the Zelda fan was definitely pleased. I mean, I think a lot of the fans that are playing this weekend are definitely going to be happy with the game, and not just the gameplay itself, but the narrative, the story, and hopefully walk away with a greater investment in these characters than what they probably already had before, which is something that's so hard to do with characters that are already established. But that's definitely what I walked away. I walked away with a greater appreciation for everything.
Yeah, usually when watching, like, if a movie comes out and like a bunch of characters die and then they make a prequel to it, or like in this case it's a video game, the easy thing that a lot of people do is like, well, I'm not going to get too invested in these characters because we know they end up dying.
Sometimes you can't help it.
Breath of the Wild. But the way this game ends up kind of going around that, or tries to flip the expectation, is that for everyone who played like the demo or just watched the first cutscene, so I don't think it's that big of a spoiler, but there's the egg guardian that everyone
baby egg.
Zelda's version of Baby Yoda that goes back in time, and that gives it the opportunity to, oh, well, maybe this isn't the story that we're expecting. Maybe, like, it could end up based off, thousands of different made-up time travel laws. It could end up being like an infinite loop to where, like, no, this always happened, you just didn't see it, or this could just be another split timeline. You don't know what to expect.
Always gets a little sticky when we deal with time travel, doesn't it? Yeah.
So
Zelda's no stranger to.
Yes.
So I think this was the best possible way for Nintendo to make it so that it does draw from everyone's expectations, because everyone's going in being like, oh, well, maybe it'll have a good ending with like Zelda stopping Ganon, and maybe it ends with like Link being woken up or something and leads into Breath of the Wild.
Who knows?
But
Zelda 2
say for sure.
Like, what are we talking about here?
Yeah, but then everyone's expecting like, oh, well, it's gonna suck playing as these champions and then seeing them end up dying. But now it's like, you don't know if they end up dying because everything could be changed. So it's really good, because at first I was kind of annoyed by it. Whenever I first seen it, I was like, time travel, which I love time travel, but I just don't like the idea of like, it's just another timeline. Does that mean it actually is canon, or is it not? And then you play through the story and you'll eventually find out, possibly. But
so what this means for the series going forward, and what it means with everything that's been established, as cliche as it is to say, only time will tell.
Yeah.
That's and for all the guessing and the speculation and the this and the that, only time will tell what this means.
Yeah, but I just think, like, from a story and game standpoint, I think it's the best way that Nintendo could make it. So, like, as soon as you start the game, it tells you, like, oh no, this could end up being different. It could end up being the same, but now you can be invested in the character because you literally don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah. And isn't that the best brand of storytelling, is when you don't know what's going to happen?
Right.
Yeah.
That's what was it? Like,
but now we know exactly how it could all go very wrong.
Yeah. Like,
the stakes are high.
Expect the worst, but hope for the best. Daniel, I guess it's your turn. Or Joe, actually, do you have anything like special or exciting, some sort of experience in this game or the making of the game that you would like to mention before Daniel gives his question?
Gosh, I mean, I think I've covered a lot of everything. Again, working from home and having it being a little difficult just with being in a hot, stuffy booth as opposed to like a nice, cool, climate-controlled one out in LA. But again, I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. It was a heck of an experience, and again, if they bring back Daruk, I will be here 1,000 times if they'll have me. And no regrets whatsoever. And like I said, on a certain level, you kind of have to geek out a little bit because it's like, dude, I recorded a Zelda game, here in my booth. Like that, what is that? Like that's crazy. That's outrageous. So I'm extremely grateful to be back and, be reprising this character and like I said, I think Joe, the professional voice actor, is very happy, and Joe, the fan, is also geeking out too. So yeah.
All right. So we'll have the last 10 minutes here. We'll try to end it around 5 p.m. Eastern or 2 p.m. Pacific. But for everyone in the chat, go ahead and get your questions and comments ready, and we'll do the last 5 or 10 minutes with questions from you guys. So Daniel, do you have a final thing?
Yeah, I guess while everyone starts clambering at their keyboards, quick question is something I've noticed in this game versus those the cutscenes and memories in Breath of the Wild. There's a lot more moments, because not everything's just from Link's point of view now. There's a lot more moments where we see characters interact with each other that we didn't really get to see much of. We see a moment where again, I'm keeping early game stuff, no like big story spoilers, but you see like a moment where Urbosa kind of tells Revali off and stuff like that, and it was just really great. Would you say like your experience with the cast as a whole was different because of that, like being able to work with these different actors together and interacting with your characters more, or was that something that you felt was pretty still the same for you?
For the most part, it's pretty same. I mean, I would say that my relationships with a lot of the main voice cast, it's only grown. And I view us as a family, and we'll go and we'll do conventions together, me and Patricia and, Jamie and Bill and Sean and, Elizabeth, and we'll get the band together and we'll go out and I have a genuine love for each and every one of these guys. And I love spending time with them, and I love doing all that. And so I would say that our relationships now, and especially going into working on this project, the relationships have been defined even more, and you kind of think of it as, in high school terms where, who's the jock, who's the nerd, who's the bully, who's the cheerleader. And so, you kind of know those roles, and the dynamics, and the people that are playing them, and you also know their characters so much more than you did 4 years ago. So for me, it's just that much more of an opportunity to strengthen those relationships, both on a personal level, but also just with what we did in game.
That's awesome. Yeah. There's a lot of those really great character moments where you see and like you said, the variety in this cast of characters is phenomenal. Especially my favorite are some of the interactions between actually Mipha and Daruk, because of how vastly opposite their personalities are, and it's just a lot of fun to see how they also just get along very well, I guess.
Yeah.
But moving on, we have a question in the chat.
First,
here.
My final question is...
yes, Jess, sorry.
Earlier, we talked a little bit about what it was like when you learned that, you're going to be a playable character in this game when you weren't in the original. So, did you go into this script knowing, you're going to be voicing this playable character for this Lord of the Rings type game? Or did you learn about that after, when you found out it was going to be Hyrule Warriors? Or... when exactly?
I mean, the details were very kind of general and very vague going into it. Like I said, I kind of knew, that it was this medieval fantasy-esque game, but you don't know what you're getting yourself into.
Right.
And then once they start peeling back the curtain a little bit, and it's like, no, we're working on Hyrule Warriors. Oh, and they start kind of feeding you some of the plot points, and these are the characters involved, and this is what happens, and some of it you learn sort of as you're going along. Some of it, for me as a gamer, knowing Dynasty Warriors and Hyrule Warriors and knowing the history and you know, I kind of already was able to sort of piece together some things. But again, you know, so it's a mixture, it's a blend of all that, where you're sort of learning as you go. Some of it you already kind of know. So I don't know if that answers your question. I'm sorry.
No, that's good. So what was it? With all the different voice actors that was added to this game, you mentioned like when you go to conventions and stuff, everyone gets along, and it's like a big reunion of all the different voice actors with Rivale and everyone. But now there's all these additional voice actors. So now I imagine if conventions and stuff were going on, it would be like a group twice the size going in to
possibly, man. Possibly. And you know, it's funny because I know some of the characters, and I also know some of the people personally that are, you know, new to the cast. So there's that. But again, I can't speak to like the bigger picture just because I only know what I've interacted with as far as my recording sessions go. So, you know, what those other characters like, unless Daruk was opposite them. Like I know bits and pieces, and so I'm sure the fans would be able to tell me more about like, oh, this character does this, and or this character does that, and the one person that I think I'm probably the happiest for would probably be Andy Gibson.
And who did he voice?
She was Impa.
Or she? Yeah.
She was Impa. And so she goes from voicing an old lady in Breath of the Wild to Danny, I can't hear you.
Your mic is muted.
Oopsie, sorry about that. So
yeah,
I didn't realize it was the same voice actor in those two games.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that to me, that speaks to her ability and her range and everything. And she, you know, she kills it.
That's amazing. That's really cool.
Yeah.
All right. Do we want to start on the fan questions now? We got about 8 minutes left.
We've got
the one that made me.
That have trickled in.
All right. While you find one, I have one already picked out. It kind of made me laugh a minute ago. It says,
Go for it.
From RPG, Joe, are you in real life afraid of dogs?
No, I love dogs. I'm a dog person. It's cats that I'm afraid of. I am very, very, very allergic to cats. So like I could not have one. Like I just like I would probably die or something. I don't know. Like, not that I have anything against them, but cats are the ones I got to watch out for.
All right, Daniel.
Yeah. This question is from the Glukester, who we know as Hylian Luke as well. Yeah. He asked, and again, I'm gonna ask this question with adding my own sort of disclaimer. Again, not everybody who's watching this has played or finished the game or anything. So without spoilers, of course, he asked, what was a favorite line of yours to record for Daruk, or just a favorite token line or anything like that?
Oh, are you talking about on this project or?
I'm sure he means Hyrule Warriors, but you can go.
I'm sure he means, but you could do both.
I mean, gosh, I can't go into it without spoiling anything.
Okay, that's fair.
All I can tell you is that there are some moments late in the game. And for those of you that have progressed and are either near the end of the game or have finished it, I will hope that you will know what I'm talking about. But there are a couple of moments, particularly near the climax, the end of the game and the end of the story, that really just like, yeah.
All right.
So
for the people
I'm
who
looking forward to it.
For the people who really want to know, if you would like, you can tell me like on Twitter or something. Just send a DM with like what the quote is or where it would be at, and then I can just hide it in the description for the people that really want to know. They can go looking buried in the description. Because I haven't made it there, but I'm sure it knowing Daruk's character, it should be hilarious.
Yeah.
What was the one with RPG again? With all the different characters you voiced, is it hard for you to get back to a role like Daruk, or does it come naturally? Do you prepare by reviewing what you did before, like watching Breath of the Wild Memories? And I thought that would be a good question. I don't mean to take the same person's question twice from every instead of other people who's commented, but I thought that would be a good, not just for Breath of the Wild or Age of Calamity, but for voice actors in general.
You know what? Going into it, I would say a couple of days before we started recording, I did go back and revisit a lot of my cutscenes and the lines and like I said, the delivery, the cadence, a lot of those little nuances that we had touched on in Breath. I kind of just had to kind of go back and revisit. And like I said, there were moments where, some of those first few sessions for Hyrule where I would go back and you can kind of, I could channel some of the direction that I got in Breath of the Wild from Jamie Mortellaro that it's like, okay, that's right, the delivery, the this, the that, and you go back and you just play and you have fun. But I did go back and do a little bit of homework prior to working on this. Yes.
All right, Daniel, can you find another one? And then I'll give a final question to end it off.
Yeah, let's see. Just trying to find one that's
I did see
certain parameters.
I did see a couple that were sort of spoilery, or could be spoilery. As someone who hasn't played through all the game, I don't know if they are spoilers.
Sadly, this one is a good one.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
I was just going to say, sadly or happily, instead of me playing through Hyrule Warriors, my 5-year-old daughter has been playing through Hyrule Warriors. So I hope she doesn't come in and just be like, "Oh, Daddy, this happens and this happens and this happens."
Oh no!
Spoiler alert!
Oh boy. Yes, but this question comes from Gus Laz. So Gus asked, "What do you think of the baby guardian? Just thoughts on him?"
Gus was excited for you to be coming in.
You kind of called it before earlier, but when I saw him. I'm like, that's Baby Yoda. That's the Zelda universe's version of Baby Yoda. Like I was just like, that's it. That's the Baby Yoda. Like for this game, and I love him, and he's adorable, and he's so beautiful, and I don't want anything bad to happen to him. Like, yes, he's so special to me.
This reminds me of a great meme I saw, where. My favorite show, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, there's this scene in it where Rosa, who's very much like the tough, badass character, as it were, but she gets a dog, and anyways, they just Photoshop the egg into it, and it's her saying, "I've only had egg for a day and a half, but if anything happened to it, I would kill everyone in this room." And I'm like, yeah, that resonates.
Yeah.
That one resonates.
Yeah. Pretty much true.
All right, so to end this off, as always, I think because every time we interview someone, whether it's a voice actor or an actor, a musician, or someone else, sometimes, once upon a time, I was lucky enough, and I want to get him back on, but Mike Drucker, who's a known comedian, he's worked at IGN and a bunch of other places, but he used to work at Nintendo, and he worked there when he basically the thing that he jokes that he likes, that he is most well known for, is that he was the one who actually came up with the name for Groose in Skyward Sword, and because of Groose and his name, he ended up becoming a big meme in the Zelda community. If anyone knows the character of Groose. So we like to ask people when we end it off about how others who may be interested in pursuing a similar kind of career. So last time we did ask you, but this time things are a bit different, because now instead of going into a potential studio or something, what is the best advice that you have for potential amateur voice actors or people that are just getting started with the way the world is now?
So I will say this: it is the best time to get into voiceover. It is also the worst time to get into voiceover. And what I mean by that is we're all working from home. Like, we're all working from home. A lot of people think that you need to be in a place like LA, you need to be in Dallas, you need to be in New York to do voiceover professionally. And for the longest time, and maybe even after this pandemic is over, that'll very much be true. Right now, I think those lines are very much blurred. Where and if you want to do commercials, you don't have to be in those major markets. It helps a lot. But as we've seen, like I think Patricia, and I don't want to like give away too much, but I think she was recording her lines in Canada. So like her, coming over, she has a booth out over there at her place in Canada. So again, it is very much possible to record anywhere in the world. So you don't need to be in one of those major markets. You can be in, Topeka, Kansas, or, Miami. You can be in Sheboygan, Wisconsin, like anywhere. And that's one of the beautiful things. But that being said, I feel like you lose something by not having that personal touch, by having that in-person training that most people would have in sort of like a classroom or a workshop type of a setting. So that's something that's tough. So you got to take the good with the bad.
All right. Well, I'll let Daniel say the final goodbyes, but before you leave, obviously everyone is here for Age of Calamity, or if they're just a fan of Daruk from Breath of the Wild, or a fan of you from some of your other work, as you mentioned earlier. But do you have any other work that has recently come out, or that you would like to give a mention for people to check out?
The stuff that I can talk about, like I said, Spider-Man Miles Morales came out last week. That was a lot of fun. I did some performance capture on that, and that was so much fun. I'm glad to be able to finally talk about that. And
so you had to go in with like the dots and stuff?
Yep.
Awesome.
I had the dots, I had the suit, I had the helmet and the rig and all of that stuff, and it was crazy, man. But it was just a marvelous, no pun intended, kind of an experience, And I don't have a big performance capture background. I have a big theater background, so it in many ways it kind of served that. I remember talking with Jamie Mortellaro about it. Prince Sidon himself and the director of Breath, because he's done a lot of directing and he's directed a lot of performance capture type stuff. But he said something to the effect of, it is the most natural performance you will ever give in the most unnatural set of circumstances or environment. And I didn't know what he meant when he first said it, but after having done it, I completely understand what he was getting, because at the end of the day, despite all the dots and the stuff and the wires and the rigs and all that other stuff, at the end of the day, you're just working on your scene with your scene partner, and that's it. All of that other stuff doesn't really matter as much, because if you just do the script, if you play the scene, if you play your objectives, which are things that you should be doing regardless of what contraption they have on you, then all that stuff doesn't matter, and you just act, and that's it. And so yeah,
at the beginning of that, what you mentioned clears up what I was confused about earlier. Maybe it wasn't King Rome that I saw that was the director or that was in charge, but it was Prince Sidon.
Yeah, Jamie was the director of Breath of the Wild, and they also had him voice Prince Sidon. And it's funny because I think they had auditioned a bunch of guys, and it's like, oh, we want this and that, and Jamie, if you've I've worked with him on many projects already, but he is very animated when he directs, and he's like, oh, and he's like this, and he's got these qualities, and he's a good guy, and he does, and Jamie's so knowledgeable about everything and every part of whatever project that he works on. And so I think at a certain point, the producers from Nintendo just said, why don't you voice him? We can't find anybody that voices this character with the same qualities that we're looking for. You would be a good fit. And so, at first I think he was very much against it. And actually, you just reminded me about something, Jesse, because for the longest time, Jamie didn't want to take credit for Prince Sidon's work. He did not reveal himself. He kind of kept it very quiet, just because I don't know if I don't know why, but he just didn't want it public. And so it led a lot of people to speculate that Bill Rogers, who voiced King, was also the voice of Sidon. But as time went on, Jamie kind of came out and said, yeah, it's me. I voiced Sidon. And, he knocked it out of the park. And everybody loves Sidon. And so,
maybe he's worried about all of us falling in love with him.
Yes. Yes.
All right, Daniel, do you want to do the outro for everything?
You can do it. It's up to you. I'm fine with either.
I just thought, taking turns. But so...
You go ahead.
All right, Joe, thank you for coming on. For those who may want to follow you on Twitter or other social media, where could they go to keep track of some work that you're doing or to follow you for more work?
You can find me on the same Twitter handle between Twitter and Instagram, although I'll be honest with you, I'm more active on Twitter, but it's at Joe Hernandez VO. You can find me on there, and in fact, I am doing a raffle on Twitter this entire weekend right now. I'll be picking one lucky follower at random later tonight for a signed autographed copy of 𝐓𝐻 of Calamity. I'll be giving out also a signed Daruk amiibo and also a little keychain too, with a little baby guardian.
Perfect. I guess I have to score myself a third Daruk amiibo by entering this round.
Daniel doesn't need more amiibo.
I don't know I always need more. One in box, one out, and one signed.
There you go. That's the way to do it.
All right. So, Joe, thank you for coming on. Everyone, thank you for coming and listening to our interview with Daruk, and for especially for those who could catch it live on a day's notice. So thank you all. And Daniel, thank you for joining us as well.
Jesse, thank you for hosting us, Jesse.
Yes, thank you. All right. So everyone, have a great rest of your day or a great night wherever you are. And Joe, thank you once again for always coming on and giving us a very interesting, entertaining chat.
Anytime.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Stay safe.
My hand isn't working.
Oh, no.
All right. There we go. That's it for now, but a lot of rumors, news, and details are slowly leaking out. So please, stay subscribed and notified, and join our Discord to make sure you stay up to date on all Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 news. And you can find our Zelda podcast, the 𝐈𝐧𝐬𝐭𝐴𝐽, here on YouTube and on iTunes, where we have had many guests who have worked on the Zelda series, and have shared a lot of amazing stories about voice acting, such as Patricia Somerset voice acting as Zelda, Mike Drucker on Zelda's writing or translation team, coming up with the jokes in the game, stories behind the names of characters that he created. Please subscribe and let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you. If you are a fan of our Zelda videos like this, Zelda Theories, our Zelda podcast, the 𝐈𝐧𝐬𝐭𝐴𝐽 on iTunes, we would all really appreciate your support at patreon.com/GameOverJesse. That and buying our t-shirts will get you and your YouTube or Twitch a shout out every week on our 𝐈𝐧𝐬𝐭𝐴𝐽. And if you send in a photo of yourself in our Game Over Jesse or 𝐈𝐧𝐬𝐭𝐴𝐽 t-shirt, we can use it for promotion at the end of some of our videos.